We're joined in the studio by a man who really is always prepared, I think. Alex Armstrong spends his days suited and booted working as an advocate, but in his spare time, and I'm assuming in slightly more sensible shoes, Alex, you might spot him out in the wilderness making fires, building shelters and doing a fine job of staying alive where most of us would be calling out for our mums, or maybe Bear Grylls would be more appropriate. Alex Armstrong, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
No worries, thank you for having me.
It is lovely to have you. And obviously people might have heard you on Mandate this morning because you're talking about the survey of the future for scouting of the island. We're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes' time. You are now something of a scout leader yourself, but you were a scout, weren't you, in your youth?
Yes. So I've gone right the way through. Started at 6 when I was a beaver, become a cub, scout, explorer, and then became a leader afterwards. So
you just couldn't leave, could you?
I know.
And has it changed much over that time?
A little bit, I think. I've seen a lot more modernising of certain things, even like little things down to badges. So badges that I did when I was a scout are vastly different from the badges that you can get nowadays. So nowadays there's snow sport badges and street sports and digital citizens, all things that didn't exist at the time, that I now have to be able to learn how to do in order to teach the scouts.
Interesting.
Just quickly got to ask Alex, a digital citizen badge. What's that all about?
So the digital citizen badge it's a stage badge. You can do it from being a beaver right the way through to being an explorer scout. So everyone can do a little bit. And it's just about being more digitally aware, I think. Getting more people involved is a skill that people now need to know. So it ranges from everything from sort of website design to making videos to just learning how to use a computer, really.
Which is brilliant, isn't it? Because, you know, as we've often said this on the show before, I think initially everyone was quite scared by the idea of the sort of onslaught of digital media and how it might affect children. And obviously we do still need to be careful with the amount of time that they spend on devices, but you have to embrace it at the end of the day, don't you? Because that is the way the world is going.
Absolutely. And I think scouting needs to evolve in that sense to keep up with what the youth of today want. And I take the point that we're educating them, but we're also teaching them at the same time the risks that are out there and how much time you should be spending on these things. So they're learning about it and also learning the sort of do's and don'ts as to how to use it.
Excellent. If they've got the knowledge, then they can use it wisely.
Exactly.
It's all about being prepared.
This is it.
You see?
Isn't it? Yeah.
It's got to be one of the best slogans for an organisation, that. It's just brilliant.
I think that's 2. Shall I mark it down on my sheet now?
Do I get a badge?
I think so. There is a media relations and marketing badge.
I would totally win that.
You would actually. Maybe between now and 3 o'clock you can prove your worth and see if you can get your colours in the next hour or so.
Can I just state, though, I think I might be the wrong gender.
Absolutely not.
Oh!
So one of the things that a lot of people have about the idea of scouting is it is boys, and scouting is not. It's co-educational. It's the largest movement in the UK, and we welcome boys, girls. Everyone can become a scout.
Fantastic.
We've had girls in for quite a few years now, and the numbers are growing. So second on where I'm from, we've got a few girls in beavers and a few more in cubs and scouts. So they are taking hold of it.
And does that mean that they are different activities then than what the likes of the Brownies and Guides would do? Because obviously they're still in existence as well.
Yeah. I was going to say
controversial. I can see a raw point here.
I think that the Scouts have always been known for doing certain activities, and they're quite adventurous, I think. And for some girls, I think that's just what they want, and they're not perhaps attracted by Brownies and Guides and the sort of activities that the Scouts do. They want to be a part of, and so they get involved. I have nothing against the Brownies and Guides; they do a wonderful job. But yeah, some girls have decided that Scouts.
It just offers something different, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got actually a few within Oncon that do Brownies and Scouts.
Brilliant.
Just to get best of both worlds.
I have to say, I think if I was considerably younger than I am now, I probably would have maybe opted for the Scouts, because I did try Brownies and just it wasn't my thing. But the idea of going out and adventuring and then sort of, as you said, building fires on beaches and things. Yeah. Oh, I love that idea. So there you go. That could be another of our challenges.
Yeah, we are. There's another one. Yeah, Christy will be out on the beach building a fire.
Scouting.
There you go.
Yeah, wilderness survival with Christy D. Nobody should watch that. Anyway, also on the programme today, we're going to be, as I said, talking about this survey for the future of scouting in a few minutes with Alex. And we're also going to be hearing a little bit later from a multi-talented creative who's holding an exhibition of photographs, watercolour and also poetry this week weekend, and that's in order to raise money for a charity that is very close to her heart. And we'll be taking a look at a whole bunch of wonderful ways that you can get creative this Easter weekend with the little people in your life. So if you want to get involved in anything we're talking about today, if you've got any questions, for instance, for Alex, for our studio guest this afternoon, you can text 166 177, or you can use the hashtag on social media, MRWomenToday, or you can email us, studio@manxradio.com. But first, as you just heard us talking about, and as you may have heard on Mandate this morning, you only have a few days left to have your say on the future of scouting in the Isle of Man, as the Scout Association's public survey draws to a close this weekend. It's all part of a new strategic plan to grow and develop scouting on the island over the next 5 years. And to find out more, we are joined by Cub Scout leader, let me get all this right, Cub Scout leader, assistant Scout leader, and unit leader for the World Scout Jamboree, as well as being a member of the Island Executive Committee and one of the people behind the running of the TT scoreboards. And this is just in his spare time.
This is it, isn't it? I mean, goodness. Oh, I don't know. Where'd you get the time to do it all? That's
endless, I know, but Alex Armstrong. I can imagine, yes. But you don't need it, do you? Because you can just get by regardless.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
So we've just talked a little bit about how scouting maybe has changed over the years. It's interesting that this survey is open to the general public, whether or not they have previously been in the Scouts, whether they've previously had any sort of vested interest in the organisation. You just want everybody's views, don't you? Which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from an internal perspective, the views of the general public who have no scouting connection at all, and that includes everyone from age 6 onwards, I think their views are perhaps more important than the views of people within the organisation. So we're constantly looking at things internally and what works and what doesn't, and changing little things. But for this, looking at a massive sort of strategic plan of what we want to achieve over the next 5 years, I think we really need to look at our general perception that the public have. So do the public think that scouting is just for boys? Or do the public think that it's all about a certain thing and it's actually not? Do we need to change that? Are the members of the public out there who want to become involved in scouting but don't know how? Or are there 10-year-olds out there who really want to get involved, but they have this sort of idea of how it works, and that's actually not true? So if we know what their views are, then we can change that and develop it.
So why now? Why do you think this is necessary now?
The reason now, the UK Association have a 5-year plan as well, and they conducted a big survey similar to ours, but on a larger scale in the UK. I attended an event last year where we reviewed some of the statistics for that, looking at the next 5 years, and was just really engaged with it and thought, wow, there's lots of statistics there that are quite shocking in a good and bad way. So came back to the island and said, well, we need to do our own strategic plan. More often than not, we just sort of follow the UK's one and change it a little bit. And I thought, let's do something on the island. Let's have a proper health check and see what people think over here, because our objectives are going to be different to the UK as a whole. And hence the survey. So
have you ever done anything like this before? Any kind of sort of, chance for the public to have their say on such a big level, or is this a first time?
It might be a first time certainly for a long time anyway. For my part in scouting, I can't certainly remember something happening on this scale in the past. And I'm not suggesting that it's going to happen again in 5 years' time either. But I thought it was just a key point in time that when we can look at the UK data, we can have a look at the Isle of Man data and see how it compares, and work out what we need to prioritise on the island, because scouting is different over here than the UK.
In what ways is it different?
I think it's largely due to the demographic of people that we have on the island. So scouting in the UK are spending a lot of time and resources into certain areas of the country and certain demographics, whereas if we were to copy and paste that to the Isle of Man, it perhaps doesn't translate very well. Our size impacts things as well, the amount of young people and the amount of leaders that we have. So I think we just need to focus on what the survey hopefully identifies are the key issues, and we can say, right, on the island we have the scoreboards, for example, and people like that, but they want it to change, or they want us to do more stuff. The other great thing about here is that we have so much open space, so much outdoor space. So when scouting is targeting groups in city centre Manchester and saying, oh, we are strategic plan is to get outdoors more. Doesn't necessarily apply over here because we get outdoors a lot anyway. So maybe we need to be looking at more indoor stuff on the Isle of Man. I don't know, but hopefully the survey will yield those answers.
Have you had much response so far, and have you seen any of the responses?
I have. So I suppose, the sort of main coordinator for it. And so I have access to the responses coming in. I've not had a proper review of all of them, but I can look at the figures of what's coming in. I would say it's all anonymous, so there is the option to enter a little sort of competition at the end. And all I will know then is that you have entered it. I won't know what your responses are, so it's anonymous in that sense. We've had a great uptake from within Scouting. We've had a large uptake from members of the public so far. So I think we're in the couple of hundreds of responses from adults. The 6 to 25 not involved in Scouting is where we're low on numbers at the moment. So that's the area that we'd like to hear a lot from, because these are the people who aren't Scouts at the moment, and we want to know why they're not Scouts and perhaps what might make them become Scouts.
You say why they're not Scouts. Are you sort of suggesting that the uptake isn't as good as it could be over here for that age group then?
Not necessarily. I think we are a movement and we're always looking where possible to grow and develop. And if we can get more people involved in Scouting, then that's for the best. So if there's certain people on the island who are put off it at the moment for one reason or another, if we know what that reason is, then we can look to perhaps get them involved. So if they go, I don't want to be involved in Scouting because it's boys in shorts and it's camping every weekend, if we can get the right sort of publicity out there that says actually that's not representative, that might make them think again and want to be involved. We don't want to be putting people off joining Scouting and perhaps removing the opportunity for them to be involved because they have this idea about what Scouting is and it perhaps isn't completely correct, or they want to do certain things but Scouting doesn't at the moment offer them. And so how can we offer those things to get more people involved?
It's interesting you say that about the perception of it, because we have had a message in from somebody who was asking, there is a bit of an impression over here that perhaps the Scouts here is somehow sort of religion based or Christian focused, but is it sort of open to all? Does it have any sort of religious link at all?
It did have a religious link, and it still does to some degree, but we are multi-faith, and in that respect also no faith. So Scouting is not religious in that sense. If people want to, when you used to join Scouts, you had to make a promise. You still have to make that promise. It used to be on my honor, I swear by.
Aren't you supposed to hold your hand?
Yeah.
Okay. Do it properly, Alex. Do it properly.
So one of them, so my cub promise is, I promise that I will do my best to do my duty to God and to the Queen. Now that immediately makes you think of religion. Mm-hmm. There are about 5 or 6 different versions of that promise. So you can promise to different gods, and you can promise to no God. You can just promise to yourself. So there is still that religious element if people want it, but certainly it's not dominated by religion at all. And I think less and less so religion is playing a massive part. It perhaps once did. It's still there, but less and less so.
And clearly this is a great opportunity for youngsters to get all kinds of things, all kinds of different experiences. You've been involved in the Scouts now for the best part of 20 years, so just doing the maths. You've never escaped.
Don't be mean, Ben. You're not supposed to reveal that sort of information.
But it is quite a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So clearly you have enjoyed that. What have you got out of it, Alex, personally, over those years?
I think I've got a lot out of it. I still like to think that where I am today is partly because of Scouting. Taking Scouting out of it in terms of where I am personally and professionally, Scouting has taught me a lot of things over the course of those years, from basic things to working in a team, to leading a team, to being able to talk to people and communicate, to thinking through problems. These are all skills for life, that I think a lot of people like about Scouting, that I have learned that stick with you for the rest of your life. Certainly the responses I've seen to the surveys at the moment from the public are that the one thing they think makes Scouting different from every other outside school or club is these skills for life. And I think that's certainly something that we want to be focusing on going forward, these skills that people need. And that comes down to the digital citizen badge, where it's these skills of using a computer and using the internet and knowing how to do it. It's all these things that we're setting up children to be hopefully great members of the community in their future life.
Well, that's fantastic. So speaking of the survey then, because that's obviously what we're talking about today, there's not long for people to take part in it. There are people who are often a bit reluctant to take part in surveys because they think they might be a bit daunting, take up too much time. What does it actually involve?
So the surveys, there's 4 surveys. The 2 that are open to the public are one for adults and one for those aged 6 to 25. They're online, but there can be paper copies available if people would prefer that, or I can sit on the phone and talk people through it and I'll fill it in for them. It's, I think, 10 short multiple choice questions, dead easy. There's an open-ended question at the end, which I think just says any other comments, anything you want to put down. And it should take about a minute or 2 to complete. I say it's completely anonymous. The results are going to be used internally to begin with. They might then be shared depending on what the response is. So I'd say don't be daunted by it at all, and you're helping a great cause as well.
Yeah, it is a good cause. So how do people actually do this then? What's the best way to do it? Because it's said online or paper copies. Where do they go online, for instance?
So the best place to go is the Manx Scouts website. So if you go to manxscouts.com/future, and then that's got all the information on there. It's got all the links to the relevant surveys. It's got some contact information on there if you want to get in touch and ask a question or you need some help with it. And then I can happily provide that information for people.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. And I guess obviously you're looking for people to join, but volunteers as well. It's not just a case of joining the Scouts. I suppose you're always looking for sort of parents, etc., to sort of come along and help and volunteer in that respect.
Yeah, there's so many adult roles within Scouting. We always think of Scouts or adults in Scouting as Scout leaders, but there's so many roles beyond that. So we have an activities team, for example, who are people who don't necessarily want to give up a week of their night all the time, but they'll happily go out on a Sunday and run some climbing sessions for people or some archery sessions. So they still have engagement with the Scouts that way, but they don't have to commit on a weekly basis to running these meetings. There's certain support roles that we require. So we have an appointments process that you have to go through, and we need people to sit on that and review applications. We have an appointments secretary. So there's so many adult roles within Scouting that go far beyond just turning up on a Monday night for a couple of hours and helping run meetings that way.
Excellent. So again, I'm assuming if people go to the same website, they'll be able to find out how they could possibly volunteer for that.
Yeah, so on the Manx Scouts
fabulous.
website, there's loads of information. I think there's a big tab that says Get Involved, and that talks about all the information from adults wanting to get involved to getting kids involved as well.
Wonderful.